Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our first segment of the day is dealing with the real possibility of World War III happening if China backs Russia. As always, support the show by hitting that like and subscribe button. Leaving us a short, sweet comment down below. Your help support will be greatly appreciated. Well, there's news out there and circulating that China might be backing Russia in Ukraine, which could mean World War III. And this is kind of the conversation that's happening at the moment. World War III could break out if China actively supports Russia in its year-long battle to subdue Ukraine. This comes from Volodymyr Zelensky. Quote, for us, it is important that China does not support the Russian Federation in this war, the Ukrainian president told German daily Die Welt on Monday. In fact, I would like it to be on our side. At the moment, however, I don't think it's possible. But Zelensky added that he sees opportunity for China to make a pragmatic assessment of what is happening. Because if China allies itself with Russia, there will be a world war. And I do think that China is aware of that. And this is kind of conversations that we've heard Biden talk about in some way, shape, or form, not literally say World War III, but does say that there's going to be consequences if China does this. And we should all be alarmed by this as well, because we're not really in a position to be on multiple fronts. And you've heard this on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. Everybody's really talked about it, saying, look, we're not in anywhere near the shape that we think we are in the way that we talk about ourselves in terms of being able to be in Ukraine, China advancing over there, the possibility of China invading Taiwan, and all these things happening. We're just not in a place of where we need to be. We talk a big game a lot, but again, we're not where we should be. You can go back to even the Obama administration of really wanted depleting our military and lowering the standards as well. And then you had Trump in office wanting to build up our military because you understand there's actual evil in the world. But you have these progressive leftists in conjunction with the Democrat Party always saying, oh, America's evil, America this, America that. All the while there's still slavery happening in the Middle East. All the while they're still beheading Christians all across the world. All the while you have China still having camps around with the Uyghurs. All sorts of stuff's happening. But you have these progressive leftists that are a bunch of idiots trying to run the show that voted in Joe Biden. And now he's the knucklehead running the show. And now we're dealing with this whole mess. Well, because if China allies itself with Russia, again, there will be a world war. The Ukrainian president's remarks come one day after the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken admitted that the U.S. was very concerned that China is considering providing lethal support to Russia as it continues its long invasion on its western neighbor. Blinken told NBC's Meet the Press Sunday that he told his Chinese counterpart that such a move would have serious consequences in our relationship. And this was kind of echoed by Joe Biden himself. It goes on here to say on Monday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson took a tougher tack, when he said the United States is in no position to make demands of China. There is some truth to that, believe it or not. I mean, we're a world power. So is China. China has nuclear warheads as well. If you remove the nuclear warheads, we would wipe China off the face of this earth rather quickly. If you all remember the Gulf War, Iraq was, they believe, the third largest military on the face of the planet. And we took them out in like a week or two. Like legitimately, I think it was like 2 weeks. So we would do the same thing with China. But the problem is they have nukes and they're not afraid to use them. The spat comes at a particular wrought time in the relationship between the two nations, which most recently quarreled over a Chinese spy balloon that floated above most of the United States being shot down earlier this month. And if you recall that one, Joe Biden literally let our intelligence community watch it lift off mainland China, fly all the way across the United States, and then they take it out after they gathered a bunch of intel. And you know what? So they gathered intel. I think the bigger problem is that the image of it and the optics of it to the Chinese going, wow, if they're just going to let us fly a spy balloon all the way across the United States and just gather whatever we want, what else are they willing to allow us to do? And my assessment of all of it is Joe Biden's in the pocket of the Chinese government, and so is Hunter Biden. They got a lot of dirt on them. And so if Joe Biden does anything or steps out of line, the Chinese are just going to shellac him and just unload a bunch of information about it. So here's Zelensky's assessment echoed those of U.S. experts who testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee last week. They said this, quote, unfortunately, it may very well take countries like China pushing Russia for there to be any break in Russia President Vladimir Putin's resolve at this particular moment. It would have to be, I think, other countries beyond the United States and its Western allies demonstrating to Putin in some fashion, behind the scenes or more directly, that this war is not in their interest and that they want him to move towards the negotiating table. And it's kind of weird, and maybe somebody can let me know in the comments below. I'm not really sure if I understand Putin's whole position and thinking going into Ukraine like this. I understand he wants territory, he believes it's Russia and all those other things, but I mean, what is really the end goal here? Is it just to take land? Or is the end goal to take the land, invade Poland and the surrounding areas as well, and then really dive into a world war? I don't know if that's going to happen. I think it's really stupid of him to do something like that. But, you know, when somebody's off their rockers, who the hell knows? Joe Biden has a lot of stupid stuff, too. He is off his rockers. Well, meanwhile, President Biden made an unannounced visit to Ukraine on Monday ahead of the anniversary of Russia's invasion. So you find this kind of interesting because on one end, you have Donald Trump going to make a visit in Ohio, in East Palestine, where you had the train derailment and the toxin and the gas going all the way up in the air. And supposedly the stuff's falling on the American people. It's in the rivers, it's in the ravines. But, you know, everything according to the Biden administration is A-okay, breathing all the air. You guys are fine over there. When in actuality, no, you're not. Be very careful. But I find it interesting. Trump's going to go there and deal with the American people, as one should. Take care of your own first, because America first, right? But then you have Joe Biden making sure he's taking care of the Ukrainians. Somebody had a really awesome picture, and I got to see if I could find it, basically showing the funding that we've done, $120 billion on kind of the infrastructure or certain areas of the United States. But yet the $120 billion is going to the Ukrainians, where we're only spending a minimal amount of money here in the United States. So the Ukrainians get all our money, and we can't even take care of ourselves and our own people here. That's the way this Biden administration works. This is the way the Democrat Party works. Give everybody else our money and not focus on our own here. Just lovely. I mean, look at our military. Look at the way the Democrats have really depleted our military. There's a reason why 70% of our budget is our social programs, and like 20 to 25% of our budget is military. When you have all this going on, a possibility of World War III, you think you would start now by trying to rebuild our military just as a safety precaution? Even if it's for a decade, you think that you would actually have that mechanism in place? But no. Democrats want to sit there and worry about equity, social justice and inclusion, transing your kids, and all this other stuff. Well, Biden pledged another $460 million in security aid to the war-torn nation, and told Putin that his war of conquest is failing. 1 year later, Kiev stands, Ukraine stands, democracy stands, Biden said after meeting Zelensky at the palace. So there you go, another $460 million that we can use here in the United States. So we're going to fund the endless war here. And you got to love the messaging, right? You had the Democrats for literally like a decade or two complain about Iraq and funding that war in Afghanistan, that it's an endless war. You know, what's the actual mission? What's the objective here? And you have now Democrats doing the exact same thing with Ukraine, of which there's no boots on the ground for us. But they literally said, well, we're going to fund this till it ends. Oh, awesome. Because we don't have our own problems here in the United States to worry about. I'm so tired of always, and I think it needs to happen, but I am tired of just sending everybody billions and billions of dollars when our roads suck, our infrastructure sucks, our railways suck. Everything is sitting here falling apart here in America. And clearly we have billions of dollars to spend on it, but we're spending it in other places. We're just going to send it in just other countries. Again, there's some countries and people that need it, but we also need it here in America to make America. Let's focus on ourselves first and put America first. Well, moving into our second segment of the day, if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, folks, please do so. We got California Democrats moved to ban using the use of police canines, citing racism. So here we go again. Everything's racist. Exercising was racist. We did a show on that. Milk is racist. Band-Aids were racist. Literally, you taking off work is considered racist. So this is where our priority is at. It's not actually on advancing our military to make sure World War III doesn't happen. If it does, we can protect ourselves against foreign adversaries. No. It's sitting there making sure canines aren't in use because now dogs are racist. So California Democrats and activists are working to outlaw multiple uses of police canines in the state, citing claims of present and historical racism. This is coming from the same people that say that our roads are racist because it goes through certain demographic areas. Assembly Bill 742, introduced on February 13th by Democratic Assembly members, would end the use of canine units for arrest, apprehension, and crowd control. Police dogs would still be permitted in other situations, such as explosive detonation and search and rescue missions. Quote, from the brutal attempts to quell the civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter protests, and their day-to-day use in law enforcement, police canines remain a gross misuse of force and victimize Black and brown people disproportionately. So the same people that were pushing to defund the police, the same people that are pushing police brutality and, using too much lethality with people, which was a construed statistic, they're saying now that they don't want to use dogs. So you can't use lethal force. You can't use a taser. You can't use pepper spray. You can't arrest the guy. You can't apprehend him. You can't detain him. You can't use canines. Like, what can you do than other actually having the conversation and the guy running off going, oh, Gus, gotta let him go. So now we can't use canines because somehow they're racist. And somebody quote me on this, or at least correct me. I'm pretty sure dogs are colorblind, but somehow we're going to say that dogs are racist too now. Isn't that just cool? The need for AB 742 is apparent, not only though a historic perspective, but also through the clear racial disparities we see every year. So this is what the progressive left pushes. Anytime there's a disparity, it's discrimination or racism. There's always been disparities. You can find disparities in your own household. So it always floors me as somebody that does statistics. It always floors me when somebody talks about disparities. Yes, there will always be disparities. If you even left it up to human interaction, or heck, even force, authoritarian or not, you're going to have disparities. It's always going to happen. But for some reason, they keep pushing this nonsense. In a press release, the assemblyman cited research that said that Black and Latino individuals are more likely to be involved in canine apprehensions. According to Jackson, 65% of those seriously injured by police dogs in 2021 were people of color. Okay, so you have a disparity there. It's also 13% of the population, even if you move that down, more like 7.5 to 8% of the population is responsible for some sort of murder, homicide, apprehensions. There's also a large portion of white people, about 50 to 51%, depending on what you're looking at, that create a lot of the crime as well. But when you look at proportions of the United States, it is people of color that are predominantly creating some sort of crime. And so if you're creating some sort of crime, even in that some sort of locality of where you're running the study, you might have an uptick of 65% being seriously injured, depending on what the study is being done. So depending on what you're going to look at, you're going to have a disparity. But because of the disparity, it must be racism. That's literally their conclusion, their logic. Jackson said using police dogs for matters such as apprehensions of suspects has racist roots back to the days of slavery, noting that AB 742 bill and role is largely meant to remedy past racial wrongs. Quote, I'm always looking for ways to atone from the past, the Democrat said. Quote, how do we get out of systemic racism? See, they still think this is real. They still think systemic racism is a major aspect of America. How do we get out of racism in our narratives? How do we make sure that we erase practices that are currently being done today that we originated and perfected on our ancestors? It's so mind-blowing that they're still pushing this stuff in 2023. Jackson went as far to quote Black nationalist Malcolm X, saying that the white man is traded in white sheets for police badges and canines. Let me read that to you again. The white man has traded in white sheets for police badges and canines. Don't you just love how they just blanket just all white people wore sheets? Isn't that amazing? By the way, I don't like white supremacy. I don't like racism. I don't agree with it. I think it's evil. I think it's wrong. I can only be so clear about it. But to push this narrative is just ridiculous. Unsurprisingly, there has been much pushback against the bill, particularly from law enforcement. Yeah, you think so? You would think so. Officials have underscored the critical role canines play in keeping law enforcement safe and protecting suspects from potential deadly force, which is what we just talked about before. But when you want to defund the police, when you want to get rid of all their tools and resources they have to successfully apprehend somebody that committed a crime or whatever it may be, you're going to remove it from them. They see the bill as counterproductive to its aim. Of course they do, because everything is racist, you guys. Everything is racist. And so what they have to do is diminish everything and remove everything that actually has some good, but anything that creates a disparity is something that's bad. And speaking of disparity here, talking about California once again, parents speak out against canceling honor classes in the name of racial equity. So this actually happened the other week. But parents at a Los Angeles area school district spoke out at Tuesday's school board meeting against the administration's decision to eliminate honor classes in the name of racial equity because they didn't enroll enough Black and Latino students. So because of the disparity, we got to get rid of a class that actually is a benefit to many people, but because of the disparity among racial lines, now you got to get it out of it. You got to remove the class and actually hurt a certain proportion of people, regardless of race, because there's Asian people in there. There is Black and Latino people in there as well. There's just a disparity of the amount of proportion of people that are in there. So you're going to screw those that actually want to advance their education, that actually should be in that class and not in a general population class, because they don't meet the requirements of being in a general population class because they want to excel in their education. Well, earlier this school year, the Culver City Unified School District replaced honor classes at the high school with a one-size-fits-all approach. If anybody knows about education, you can't do one-size-fits-all. To a certain extent, you can, but when you really break down the individual, you want to keep people what's called the ZPD, the zone of proximal development in terms of learning, and you want to keep them along that path. But if you have somebody that's an honor system or an honor student and they're in a general population class, you can't keep them along that zone of proximal development. And what you'll actually tend to see is them drop off. They'll get bored, they won't do their work, and they'll actually start suffering in those classes because, again, you're not keeping them along that linear line. Well, it says here, many parents attended the school board meeting to ask the school district administration to reinstate honor classes, which they laid out in a large page resolution. Quote, I have a child in high school, one mom told the school board. It is too easy in his classroom. So that's exactly what I was talking about. They say, Mom, they say it's equity. They say that the reason and therefore it's okay. I want my child to be challenged. We are immigrants, she added. My parents are immigrants. We came to this country to have a better life, a better education, to get out of poverty. We want to be able to give them a better education because this is why we chose Culver City. Starting in fall of 2022, freshmen and sophomores at this school district have only been offered one level of English, whereas before they would choose between a grade level class or opt into an honors class, which was available to everyone, the Wall Street Journal reported. Administrators argued that this keeps everyone on the same playing field, so students are able to enroll in advanced classes in their junior and senior years of high school. Oh, well, let's just screw the freshman and sophomore years as well, which there's a good case to be made that you can actually cultivate and inculcate certain tools and resources into that student that will allow them to be successful in junior and senior year and even progress into college. And by the way, if you take that honors class in maybe freshman and sophomore year, that might actually help you advance into AP classes, which would limit your time in college, which would limit probably the amount of scholarships and grants that maybe you would receive or need to take out. So this has really big consequences. But again, this is what you see from the Democrat Party and the progressive left, where they want to sit there and limit and really lower the standards for everybody because there's a disparity. There's always going to be a disparity, no matter you look at education or crime or people's wealth. There's always going to be a disparity. And what will they always do with it? They'll always attribute it to race. Always. And that's when you see our society crumble from the inside out. That's how the left is going to destroy America, by looking at disparities and making certain judgments based on those disparities that are inherently wrong. Sometimes you will have a disparity that actually makes sense and that disparity is accurate. And sometimes you just need to let it play out the way it's going to play out rather than having this intervention, because through that intervention, you're going to have some short-term gains, but you're going to have some long-term losses. And a lot of times, one of those fallacies is you're willing to sit there and take that short-term gain that's going to affect basically a small portion of people as a positive, but in the long run, it's going to affect a lot of people in a net negative. But they never look at that. They never look at that. And then when it all goes to blank, all goes to bleep, when bleep hits the fan, then they wake up and go, oh my God, we were wrong. Oops. And the damage has been done already. A group of parents representing the Culver City Families for Education and Equity introduced a resolution on Tuesday's meeting arguing that a history of inequity requires a robust and varied array of learning opportunities so students at all levels can get the support they need to achieve their highest potential. Our beloved local school district is in crisis, one parent told the school board during the meeting. I mean, a lot of school districts are in crisis. It ain't just Culver City, let me tell you. We have entrenched patterns of disparity amongst different student populations when it comes to academic performance, and an alarming reduction of educational opportunities that are available to every student with no input from key stakeholders, meaning parents, families, and students. The group focused on one parent and student involvement in the discussion and decisions made regarding academic at the district level. Quote, families of students in our district have been offered very little visibility and information on this issue, leading to education of their children and having not being afforded meaningful opportunities to voice their views on the sweeping changes made on access to honor classes for all students. Now, what's interesting here is if you're a parent and you're dealing with something like this, the best thing you could do is one, either switch districts or offer your student more stuff in the classroom, or not just in the classroom, but also at home, that would allow them to advance in their mathematics, English, or whatever it's going to be. So don't always rely on the school district. This is something you could do. You can offer them tutoring sessions, or you could put them somewhere else. If you don't have the money, you could look at Khan Academy. Khan Academy is completely free, and you can get your son or daughter enrolled in that to take AP classes or honor classes on there to help them successfully progress the way that they should be progressing. I want to end off here with school districts that have gotten rid of honor classes believe that students who don't take those advanced classes from a young age get behind their peers and get stuck at lower levels of academic advancement, which makes it harder to enroll in AP classes, which I started at the beginning. Black students make up about 15% of high schoolers in the country, but consist of only 9% of the students enrolled in at least one AP course, and nearly 25% of students are Latino, but they only make up 21% of students enrolled in AP courses, according to the report. So it must be racism because of the disparity. It just must obviously be racism. How about looking at what the demographic is in terms of, the income, high income, median income? Is it a two-parent household? What's actually going on in those certain milieus, in those environments? What's going on within those cultures of those people? And again, culture doesn't have to be based on race. Culture is literally based on the family. It can be based on who they're hanging out with, who their friend group is. Usually, if you look at the friend group of that individual, a lot of times that the traits that the friends carry is the one that the student carries as well. So if you are hanging out with a group of friends that tend to fail, odds are you're going to tend to fail or have a lower grade than what you are expected to be if you weren't hanging out with them in the first place. And I also like to point out that actually extrapolates to your finances as well. So if you hang out with a certain level of income group, odds are, and for some reason it's 8 to 10%, it's kind of popped in my head. I could be a little bit off there, but your income will be roughly 8 to 10% of that group that you hang out with as well. Now, obviously there's going to be a range in that. Obviously there's going to be people that it doesn't hold true with, but in general, that does hold true. And that's why there's always that phrase of, be careful who you hang out with, because you might end up actually replicating who you're hanging out with. So there's a lot more questions that are involved in here. But what we tend to see is Democrat parties, progressive leftists want to destroy our education system, which they've done in Baltimore, Maryland, which we did on yesterday's episode, which they've done in Chicago, Illinois, where zero between both states, sampling 55 schools and 23 schools, zero students show that they were proficient in math and reading as well. So there you have it. The left are trying to destroy this country from the inside out. We might hit World War III. I want to know what you think about all this in the comment section below. I love hanging out with y'all. Be on the lookout for February 26th. This Sunday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to go live for about 20, 30 minutes, announce some things here, some big things, a bucket list item for me. It is a big deal for me, believe it or not. Even if it isn't for you, it really is for me to announce this. It is a big bucket list item for me, top 3. So as always, hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you tomorrow here on The Ball Brat Show.